Hey, if you're like me, you're probably really excited for some future human Mars missions. SpaceX might actually make this a realistic possibility in the near future with their Starship spaceships. One of the things that scientists have really feared is that the harshness of outer space might be selecting for bacteria that are particularly resistant to antibiotics. If there's some type of infection aboard a Starship colonizing mission, then this could be problematic if the bacteria that are inhabiting the microbiomes of the travelers, if those bacteria are resistant to antibiotics. But luckily, NASA has done a few experiments aboard the ISS to sort of see if the bacteria on there are actually resistant to antibiotics. With a paper that they had published in September of 2019. Let's take a look at that paper. So, a short disclaimer, I am by no means an expert in microbiology. I am studying to get a PhD in biochemistry, cell, and molecular biology. I'm pretty passionate about this stuff, so I thought about this and about space, so I thought I'd make a video kind of talking about these sort of cool experiments with cool implications and put it out to you guys just to see if you might like it. Mold and bacteria has been a problem in the past. Russia's space station Mir, when they had a few power outages and had some humidity control problems, the condensation in the station would actually coalesce into large globules. And these water droplets had a bunch of different species of fungi and mold and even dust mites. This obviously isn't good. So currently, NASA astronauts aboard the ISS and astronauts from other countries as well, they carry out a pretty rigorous cleaning. They basically wipe everything down once a week for a few hours to make sure that nothing begins to grow, to make sure that any potential water droplets are sort of wiped away. The humidity in the space station is also very rigorously controlled to make sure that different water droplets aren't allowed to stick around and coalesce into huge basketball-sized water spheres like they did in Mir. But it still has been an open question as to whether the bacteria aboard the ISS are different from the bacteria down here on Earth. So a bit of biology background is that every human being and every animal has a microbiome, both in their gut and on their skin and basically all over us. We have more bacterial cells than we do actual human cells. Now, again, the chief concern is that potentially, cosmic radiation, microgravity might be selecting for bacteria that are more resistant to things. We generally don't want that. We don't want superbugs to be inhabiting the ISS or being around on these long voyages to places like Mars. NASA did publish a paper in September of 2019 to investigate specifically this. This is a pretty small paper. You probably haven't heard of it. It wasn't as talked about on the general news like the twin study for the Kelly twins, but I think the findings are pretty important. So basically what they did was they swabbed different parts of the International Space Station and they tested the bacterial species found in these swabs after they were sent back down to Earth. They compared those swabs with the swabs of a control sample down in a clean room on Earth. So the clean room that they used was a clean room specifically designed to service cargo vehicles to send different items, different cargo up to the ISS for the astronauts. Now, there's a few things that they expected to find and a few unexpected things that they learned. I have a cheat sheet here that I'm reading because my memory sucks. An interesting thing that they did find was that the microbial diversity of the ISS was higher than the diversity found in the clean room on Earth. This is a pretty limited experimental study, so potentially this wasn't a huge difference. However, they did find that after cargo resupplies, the diversity had shot up. Even though all of the cargo that is sent to the ISS is cleaned beforehand, the reception of those materials in the cargo caused the diversity of the microbiome of the ISS to actually increase. So they tested the adherence of certain bacterial species to Nomex fabric, which is a type of fabric that is found in astronaut spacesuits, and they also tested it against types of anodized aluminum alloys, which certain parts of the space station are made out of this material. The bacteria that they tested were actually pretty adherent to the Nomex fabric, and what it said in the body of the publication was that they could not adhere to the anodized aluminum alloy. They didn't test every bacterial species, but for the ones they thought could adhere to these materials, these are the results. So potentially it's important. The material choice you use is important in terms of both, some of the less biological things like structural integrity, heat resistance, but it's also very important to consider how bacteria might attach and grow on these different surfaces. The bacterial species that they isolated, were they more resistant to antibiotics? Were they more resistant to extreme heat and cold? Were they more resistant to pH changes? Now, obviously, there are bacterial species specific responses to each of these conditions, but generally what they found is that the ISS bacteria are just as sensitive to these different conditions and just as sensitive to antibiotics as the bacteria found on Earth, which is good news. It's not a huge scientific finding. It's not groundbreaking, but I'm sure that these findings are a source of comfort, and they would be a source of comfort for any traveler that is going to Mars. They can be confident that if they bring antibiotics with them to treat any potential infections, that those antibiotics will be just as useful for curing infections as they would down here on Earth. Now, the spread of antibiotic-resistant bacteria down on Earth is still a concern, and they would probably bring those bacteria with them. But while the bacteria down here on Earth are still resistant to antibiotics, we can keep using antibiotics for potential travelers that go to Mars, which, is great news. So I hope you like this video. I like space stuff, I like biology, and hopefully you guys like it too. If you have any other ideas for videos I could make, I'm trying to increase the frequency of my uploads, so I'm going to focus more on content rather than, video effects and transitions, and then hopefully work those in more in the future. But for right now, while I have very few, subscribers and views, leave a comment down below and I'll probably respond to it. I've been Chad of Natural Philosopher. Thanks for watching.